By 1898, initial surveys and plans had been taken by the Southern Railway and the Louisville and Nashville Railroad to build a new rail line from Birmingham out towards the untapped southern regions of the Great Warrior Coalfield on areas that were located in southern Walker and the western sections of Jefferson counties in Alabama. Both the Southern Railway and the Kansas City, Memphis, and Birmingham Railroads lines ran from the northwest to the southeast through Jefferson County towards Birmingham, separated by an average of 4 to 5 miles. In 1900, the Louisville and Nashville Railroad, working in conjunction with the Southern Railway, mapped out a new route from Ensley northwest out towards Short Creek and the Locust Fork of the Warrior River, a distance of almost 20 miles. The Louisville and Nashville Railroad was granted a new charter by the state of Alabama to form the North Alabama Railroad that would build the new branch line along with other planned lines in the state. After much contemplation, L&N pulled out and left it to Southern Railway to construct the new line from Ensley out towards Short Creek and the Locust Fork River. Southern Railway would form the Ensley Southern Railway thereafter and decide to expand the new rail line further, where it would go from Ensley northwest all the way to Parrish of Walker County and connect with its existing line originally built by the Georgia Pacific Railway. The new proposed line would be over 35 miles in length. The Louisville and Nashville Railroad decided on a new route to reach the coal fields, which was more practical. A new branch line would initially be constructed from its main south and north line, beginning just north of Hughes Siding at Black Creek and some 4 miles north of their Boyles Rail Yard, which was located at Tarrant, just northeast of downtown Birmingham. Two additional factors in the decision to build the new branch line to the untapped coal fields were Mr. Erskine Ramsey, who was then president of the Pratt Coal Company, and Milton H. Smith, who was then president of the Louisville and Nashville Railroad. Under Mr. Ramsey's stewardship, the Pratt Coal Company had been purchasing thousands of acres of virgin coal lands to the north of Coburg, Brookside, and Cardiff, which were operated by Sloss Sheffield Steel and Iron Company, and to the northwest in the areas of Lynn's Crossing and Littleton for future mining development. Working with Mr. Ramsey was his good friend Milton H. Smith of the Louisville and Nashville Railroad, who under his tenure had done more to advance the company's rail line expansion, contributing to the growth of the Birmingham district since its founding than anyone. L&N made the decision to build the new branch line in cooperation for the Pratt Coal Company. The Louisville and Nashville Railroad Company's North Alabama Railroad would handle the construction of 2 phases of what would be called the Cain Creek branch line that would run from Black Creek to Littleton, a distance of some 29 rail miles, not including sidings and spur lines, totaling an additional 14 miles of track. Dunn and Lalonde Brothers Contracting Company of Birmingham, which had long-standing business ties with the L&N Railroad, was awarded the contract of grading both phases of the new branch rail line. The W.H. Moore and Brothers, with offices in Atlanta, Georgia, and Jasper, Alabama, were awarded the task of constructing the numerous wooden trestles that would need to be built on this new branch line, which would run through rough and hilly country to tap into the coal fields. Work on the new branch line from Black Creek to the Locust Fork of the Warrior River commenced in 1902 and was completed by December of 1904. As the new branch line was extending out, the Pratt Coal Company had been opening new coal mines and camps along the way. The last coal mine opened by the company was the Banner Mine that had its own branch line servicing it, located on the south side of the river near Littleton. Additional coal mining companies would also be able to establish operations along the new branch line during and after completion. Just north of Littleton, an additional 1.65-mile branch line had been laid for the new Sayre Mining and Manufacturing Company that had opened their new coal mines and camp in April of 1902. They began shipping coal via the Louisville and Nashville Railroad on the new Cain Creek branch line as soon as it was completed. The cost incurred by L&N's North Alabama Railroad Company to develop this section of the Cain Creek branch line totaled north of $1 million. Upon completion, the Louisville and Nashville Railroad transferred operation of the Cain Creek branch line to their Birmingham Mineral Railroad division. In addition to the transportation of coal and freight, the Birmingham Mineral Railroad would provide daily passenger rail service to the new mining camps. In April 1905, the Louisville and Nashville Railroad began construction on the second phase of the Cain Creek branch line near their station at Vulcan that was located just north of Lynn's Crossing. During this time period, the Pratt Coal Company, along with two additional coal mining companies, had been formed into the Pratt Consolidated Coal Company. The Louisville and Nashville's new Cain Creek extension would be built west over the Locust Fork River into southern Walker County, then back into the western section of Jefferson County, where the terminus would be at its new Praco coal mines that were situated along Skelton Creek. The extension would add an additional 14 miles to the Cain Creek branch line, not including additional spur lines and sidings. This new line, in cooperation with the Pratt Consolidated Coal Company, would service all their new coal mines and camps that were now being opened up. In 1906, as the Louisville and Nashville Railroad was extending their Cain Creek branch line, the Pratt Consolidated Coal Company was opening up their new coal mines at Flat Creek, located in southern Walker County, along the planned route of the new branch line. These new coal mines would be developed as slope mines operating on the Mary Lee coal seam that averaged 6 to 8 feet in thickness. These were the Gamma, Wegra, Black Creek, Hecla, and Colta mines. Complete mining camps were built with all necessary facilities and accommodations, along with new rail depots. The Wegra coal mine would end up being worked by convicts on lease to the Pratt Consolidated Coal Company by the state of Alabama. As the new branch line reached the coal mines at Flat Creek, the company was opening up their new mines at Praco that was situated along Skelton Creek, just to the south in Jefferson County. The name of the new mines and camp was given the name Praco, which stood for the Pratt Consolidated Coal Company. A series of 6 drift mines were opened up on the Mary Lee coal seam, with new minecart tramway lines that were connected to the drift mines, leading to a central coal tipple that would be situated on a rail siding. By late February of 1907, the final sections of the branch line extension and all sidings had been laid at Praco. A new combination passenger and freight depot was opened in March of 1907. Initially, some 100 new homes were constructed at Praco for miners and their families, along with the new commissary, medical facilities, and schools that were opened. Years later, a post office would be established at Praco as well. Also, during this time period, the Ensley Southern Railroad's initial 19-mile line had been built from Ensley out past Short Creek to the Locust Fork River. Later, this area would be developed as Port Birmingham. An additional 4 miles would be built by 1907 to the Pratt Consolidated Coal Company's new Maxine coal mines, located some 2.5 miles southwest of their new coal mines along Skelton Creek at Praco. The Maxine mines consisted of 2 slope mines operating on the America seam and at least 7 drift mines operating on the Pratt seam. A full mining camp with all facilities was built along with a Montgomery coal washing plant located at the Southern Rail Tipple. A rail tramway line had been built from the coal tipple down to the Locust Fork River, where a coal wharf had been built to load river barges. The Maxine mine, for a time, also had a small convict mine prison that was attached to one of the slope mines. In 1907, the Pratt Consolidated Coal Company had 6 drift mines operating at Praco on the Mary Lee coal seam that were located on the north and south sides of L&N's Cain Creek branch line. A total of 97 men were employed working both underground and in topside positions such as shops and the rail coal tipple. All of the drift mines were ventilated by coal-fired furnace shafts that were located parallel to the drift mine entrances. Just to the west of the Cain Creek branch line from Praco, the Pratt Consolidated Coal Company opened up the Knox mines, consisting of several drift mines operating on the America coal seam. Later, the Export Pratt Coal Company would also open up several drift mines in the same area, operating on the nickel plate seam. Both of these mines were serviced by a rail siding from the Cain Creek branch line located near the Praco Y. Both of these mines would operate intermittently for a number of years, employing between 15 to 30 miners at any given time. Between 1910 to 1917, only the number 3, 5, and 6 drift mines were operating at Praco that were averaging just 93,000 tons of extracted run-of-mine coal for shipment. Between 1917 to 1924, just 2 drift mines were in operation, employing on average some 110 men at various positions working underground and topside. In 1917, the newly formed Powhatan Coal and Coke Company opened a new mine some 2 miles south of Praco, operating on the Mary Lee coal seam. A new coal barge wharf was constructed adjacent to the Locust Fork River to ship the coal via barges downriver to the Port of Mobile. Almost as soon as the new mine opened, the company had serious financial trouble and sold the mine and property to the Franklin Mining Company to operate. Eventually, L&N would extend their King Creek line by constructing a 2.6-mile branch line extending south from the Praco Junction to service the growing Powhatan mine and camp. The Louisville and Nashville Railroad's Birmingham Mineral Division had provided daily passenger and freight service to numerous mining camps and communities on its Cane Creek branch line since 1904 beginning at L&N's Union Station Terminal in downtown Birmingham. Beginning in 1907, the last stop on its line was at Praco, where it would begin its return trip back to Birmingham. For many years, this invaluable rail service provided the only transportation for these communities with a link to Birmingham. Between 1910 to 1921, there was a great effort by Jefferson County officials to establish a proper road network linking every community with Birmingham, whether by paved, gravel, or packed dirt roads. In the years following the end of World War I, gave rise to the automobile and bus as an alternative to the railroads. In West Jefferson County, a series of roads was built out to Short Creek and the Locust Fork River, with a new bridge built over it to reach the Maxine, Praco, and Wegra mining communities. Today, this is known as Alliance Road. Leading south from Praco was a road leading down to the Atwood Ferry, whereby vehicles would be taken across the river to continue on the road that led to Ensley and later Birmingham. Today, this is known as State Highway 269, or better known as Port Birmingham or Birmingham Port Road. In early 1918, the Louisville and Nashville Railroad discontinued Sunday train service to Praco in an attempt to save money on the Cain Creek branch line. By 1924, the Louisville and Nashville Railroad was averaging between $2,000 to $3,000 a month in losses, keeping the passenger trains running on the Cain Creek branch line out to Praco. Later that year, the Louisville and Nashville Railroad formally petitioned the Alabama Public Service Commission in Montgomery to permanently discontinue their twice daily passenger train service to Praco from Birmingham. This caused a great outcry of protest from the mining communities of Maxine, Praco, Powhatan, Colta, and Wegra, where in this area some 5,000 people resided and worked. The only other rail options for the residents of these communities would be to utilize Frisco Railroad's daily stops at Quinton or Southern Railway's daily stops at Littleton. After lengthy inquiries and many hearings, the Alabama Public Service Commission was forced to accept the Louisville and Nashville Railroad's request and ordered that passenger rail service from Black Creek to Praco be abandoned. The Louisville and Nashville Railroad formally ended passenger rail service by late November of 1924 on the Cain Creek branch line to Praco. On November 1st, 1924, the Alabama Byproducts Corporation officially acquired the Pratt Consolidated Coal Company of Birmingham. Included in the purchase was 110,000 acres of prime coal land with more than 20 active and inactive coal mines that were producing some 2.5 million tons of extracted and processed coal annually. The majority of these coal mines were located in southern Walker and West Jefferson counties. The Alabama Byproducts Corporation had invested heavily in expanding their byproduct coke plant located at Tarrant, just north of Birmingham, and now had a seemingly endless supply of coal from their acquisition. Pratt Consolidated Coal Company's expansion and development of their coal mines along the Louisville and Nashville's Cain Creek branch line featured prominently in the purchase. Add to which L&N serviced the Alabama Byproducts Tarrant Coke plant that was situated just north of their huge Boyles rail yard. During 1925, the Alabama Byproducts Corporation would organize the Praco, Gamma, and Wegra mines into their Flat Creek division of coal mines. The Colta mine that was situated just north of the Gamma mine would later be expanded by opening a new slope mine almost a mile further north, along with a new spur line built to service it from the Cain Creek branch line. In the fall of 1925, the Alabama Byproducts Corporation initiated a massive development project of their Flat Creek division by building new modern mining camps at Praco, Wegra, and Gamma. This project included constructing some 800 new homes, along with remodeling existing homes as well. In addition, new schools, medical offices, commissaries, playgrounds, movie houses, and a new water filtration and treatment plant would be built for the plant communities. New post office buildings would also be erected at Wegra and Praco, along with the construction of new rail freight facilities. New maintenance and supply shops, along with miners' bathhouses, were also built at each of the mines. Enlarging and modifying existing wooden coal tipples were built, along with the installation of larger, more advanced Montgomery coal washing plants that were located adjacent to the tipples and rail sidings. By 1927, the Alabama Byproducts Corporation had reopened and developed a total of 8 drift mines in operation at Praco on the Mary Lee coal seam, with future plans to convert and develop at least 2 into deep slope mines. In time, many of the original Praco drift mines that would be worked out were either abandoned or subleased on contract to smaller independent coal companies to operate. Also, in 1927, mining engineers began converting and developing the number 7 and 10 drift mines into deep slope mines to follow the gradual down dip of the Mary Lee coal seam. The 2 slope mines would have an average gradual down angle ranging from 2 to 10 degrees. New inclined wooden tipples were built at the entrances to the new number 7 and number 10 slope mines, extending up to a level area where loaded mine carts would be sent to a rotary dump that was connected to the coal washing plant. Large electric dual cable hoists were installed in new hoist houses that individually serviced each mine. A large wooden coal bin was built directly over the rail sidings where washed coal was deposited for loading L&N open rail cars. The number 6 drift mine would be left in operation parallel to the number 7 mine as an auxiliary man and materials way. The latest electric coal cutting machines were used underground, as well as coal loading conveying machines to load mine carts. Electric locomotives were installed for hauling loaded mine carts and empties from active work headings to the main slope, whereby they would be hoisted to the surface. All of the mines were interconnected by long underground haulage ways. The Mary Lee coal seam covered a large area of the Warrior coal field. The Yeager, Blue Creek, and Newcastle coal seams also comprised part of the Mary Lee coal seam. The Mary Lee seam separated into what is called the upper and lower benches. The upper bench coal seam averaged 43 inches to over 81 inches in thickness, while the lower bench seam averaged just 30 inches in thickness. The majority of coal mining at Praco took place on the upper bench seam. By 1937, with the number 7 slope mine workings extending further underground to the south and southwest, the number 7.5 drift mine had been opened in a deep ravine that was parallel to the Louisville and Nashville Railroad's Powhatan branch line located some 3,500 feet in distance to the southeast from the number 7 slope mine opening, or over half a mile. Over the following years, the number 7.5 mine's furthest underground workings would parallel the west bank of the Locust Fork River, some 2.5 miles in distance from the number 7 slope mine entrance. During this period, 656 coal miners were employed by the Alabama Byproducts Corporation working at Praco. By 1938, over 8 million tons of coal had been produced from the Praco mines, with over 490,000 tons alone having been pulled by 1938, that averaged to some 3,000 tons per day at 164 days worked. The Praco coal mines had become the largest coal mining operation for the Alabama Byproducts Corporation. During the 1930s, several coal mining companies in Alabama had begun to experiment with the first types of longwall mining on extended coal faces to increase production levels. This process was performed by means of electrically operated track-mounted short and longwall electric cutting machines and electric belt conveyor systems utilized in extending out long work headers in a continuous line. During this process, large open areas are created whereby extensive roof stabilizing methods are needed to ensure proper support for the safety of the coal miners. Long before roof bolting became standard for underground mining operations, cut timbers were used on a massive scale. Mining companies in the Birmingham district that were operating on seams of coal averaging 36 to 42 inches in thickness utilized a cable or chain pulled drag scraper along the coal face by way of a track mounted electric hoist and sheave pulleys towards the mine carts and track that would be recessed lower than the work header. In many cases, an electrically operated long belt conveyor system was used in place of the drag scraper. These areas during longwall mining also had to utilize an enormous number of cut timbers with cribbing for roof stabilization support. Some of the larger mining companies, such as the Woodward Iron Company, Sloss Sheffield Steel and Iron Company, and the Tennessee Coal, Iron, and Railroad Company, maintained and operated their own forest in the state of Alabama to cultivate tree harvesting. The Alabama Byproducts Corporation had recently initiated the longwall mining method at their Praco number 10 mine in early 1937. Longwall mining operations at the number 10 mine had proven to be quite successful, and by early 1938, longwall mining operations were begun at the number 7 mine. At the number 7 mine, longwall mining was commenced on the 13th, 14th, 15th, and 16th south headers that were connected to the main slope by way of the 3rd south header and the 1st west haulage way, which led to the number 7.5 drift mine portal. The longwall sections being worked were some 300 feet below the surface, with the overburden comprising mainly of shale and sandstone. The distance from the number 7 mine portal by way of the main slope and work headings was over 8,000 feet in distance, or more than 1.5 miles underground. On the morning of July 1st, 1938, the first shift, consisting of over 150 men, descended underground into the Praco number 7 mine on man trip cars to their assigned workstations. One crew headed to the 14th South section to continue mining operations on the Longwall. Over the previous 2 weeks, there had been several roof falls averaging 50 feet in length, working the adjacent 13th South header, which had been cleared and extra timber props and cribbing installed. The night shift foreman, who was going off duty, had reported no problems except to re-examine the 14th South wall face before cutting. The original wall face was some 260 feet in length, with 153 feet having been cut or retreated. After arriving at their assigned workstation, the Longwall crew began work at 6:45 a.m. and by 8 a.m. already had one trip of 12 mine carts loaded, waiting on an electric locomotive to transport them to the main slope. 2 additional mine carts were being loaded at the end of the conveyor when at 8:12 a.m., a 350-foot long section of the roof separated and came crashing down on top of part of the mining crew. A second collapse rapidly followed in the adjacent area, landing on or near the remaining crew members. Other crews and miners nearby heard the collapse and rushed to the scene. Word was quickly relayed topside of the collapse, whereby supervisors and management activated their mine rescue crews, which shortly descended down to the affected area. The state mining office and officials were notified, along with the United States Bureau of Mines office in Birmingham. A mine rescue team and railcar train were immediately dispatched via the Louisville and Nashville Railroad's Cain Creek branch line, arriving at Praco sometime after 1 p.m. The Tennessee Coal, Iron, and Railroad Company also dispatched a rescue team from their Docena coal mine, arriving by mid-afternoon to also assist with rescue and recovery efforts. Late in the afternoon, rescue teams had reached the site, and after clearing away sections of the collapse, were able to rescue 3 severely injured miners. One of the surviving miners succumbed to his injuries en route to the surface. After many hours underground stretching late into the night and the following day, rescue crews were unable to locate any more of the mining crew that could possibly still be alive. On the surface, anxious families waited for word on their loved ones if they were still alive. Several of the 14th South Longwall crew that had managed to escape the collapse unharmed, that had already been brought out, also waited with others on the fate of their friends and colleagues. Other crew members that were severely injured had been transported to the surface and taken by ambulance to area hospitals in Birmingham. By the 4th day, with more of the roof collapse cleared, the bodies of the 5 miners were eventually recovered one by one and brought to the surface. Family members of the deceased were then informed of their loved ones' passing. A total of 6 men died from the result of the roof collapse, with others being severely injured. Company, state, and federal investigators would later conclude that large support pillars should have been left in place, as had been the traditional method to secure proper roof support due to earlier recorded collapses in that section. Further reporting would also indicate that the coal miners at Praco lacked sufficient training and experience in longwall mining. Add to which better procedures would need to be implemented for proper roof support. These kind of accidents were and are one of the highest risks to coal miners, often with deadly results when working underground. Beginning in the late 1940s, roof bolting was embraced and implemented in the Birmingham district for underground coal and iron ore mines to ensure safety of roof support in helping to prevent collapses. In 1940, the coal mining community of Praco had a population of around 1,500. 600 company built and maintained homes were provided by the Alabama Byproducts Corporation at low rent for the families. Some 800 miners were employed working at the number 7, number 7.5, and number 10 mines, while 100 of these were employed at various positions on the surface, such as the coal washing plant, repair shops, hoist houses, bathhouse, and supply shop. During the previous 3 years, all miners had undergone yearly safety and first aid training as required by state and federal mine safety regulations and union contract requirements. All miners were outfitted with the latest steel-toed safety shoes and electric battery-powered lamps that had become standard essential equipment for every state-licensed underground mine. The wearing of state, federal, and union-approved hard hats became mandatory when working underground in the mines. Mine foremen and fire bosses had to undergo extensive training and testing to be certified by the state in order to work in the mines. Most residents of Praco did their shopping at the large full-service commissary that was built in the late 1920s during the expansion. Nearby was the Praco Post Office, which also handled the telegraph system that was still in use. A fully staffed medical office was located at Praco that could attend to most health needs of the community. If not, patients would be sent to one of the hospitals in Birmingham for needed medical attention. With the outbreak of World War II in Europe in September of 1939, there had been gradually a steady increase for the production output of coal needed to supply the Allied war effort in Europe. Coal production at Praco and other Alabama Byproducts Corporation mines had been increased to supply the coke and byproduct plant at Tarrant for the making of steel and other derivatives from coal. By 1941, the mines at Praco were producing over 800,000 tons of extracted and washed coal through the plant annually. Even though the Louisville and Nashville Railroad had discontinued scheduled passenger rail service on the Cain Creek branch line in November of 1924, it had always maintained a scheduled timetable for freight service operating on the Cain Creek branch line 6 days a week from Black Creek to Praco. When the United States entered World War II after the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, on December the 7th, 1941, the need for coal to supply the war effort dramatically increased. As with other mining communities in the Birmingham district, many younger military age coal miners would enlist in the armed forces to serve the country. Others chose to wait to be drafted, while others were given deferments for the time being to work in the coal mines as it was deemed critically essential for the war effort. As with all other industries related to the war effort, 3 shifts a day were put on 7 days a week. Employment opportunities abounded due to the need for more workers, which was also the case regarding the need for more coal miners in the Birmingham district. By 1933, the Alabama Byproducts Corporation had ceased operations at their Gamma, Wegra, and Colta coal mines that were part of the Flat Creek Mines Division. These mines had been in continuous operation since 1905, working on the Mary Lee coal seam. All of the mine facilities, coal washers, and equipment had become outdated and in serious need of repair, along with the underground workings within the property boundary lines having been worked out. In 1934, company officials and engineers decided to open a new slope mine to be named Colta, located almost a mile north from the old Colta mine workings. The Louisville and Nashville Railroad built a new spur line to reach the new mine, which opened by 1936. The new Colta mine was developed as a deep slope mine operating on the Mary Lee coal seam. New surface facilities were built along with the latest mining equipment installed. Some 200 men were employed working at the new Colta mine that would extract on average 200,000 tons of run-of-mine coal annually. The new Colta mine was not equipped with a coal washing plant, so all extracted coal was loaded onto rail cars from the loading tipple, whereby the Louisville and Nashville Railroad would transport via the Cain Creek branch line to the coal washing plant at Praco. During its many years of operation, the Colta mine's underground workings would eventually extend to the north almost 3 miles in distance underground, paralleling the east bank of the Mulberry Fork of the Warrior River. The Colta mine was eventually closed by 1956. The Labuco coal mines date back to 1905 when the area was first owned and mined by the Williams Coal Company. In 1906, the Tennessee-based Lacey Buck Iron Company purchased the mines and property and established a small mining camp named Labuco after the company. Shortly thereafter, Lacey Buck was merged with the Southern Iron and Steel Company in late 1906. The Louisville and Nashville Railroad built a new line to service the mines at Labuco during that year to tie in with their Cain Creek branch network. In 1907, Southern Iron and Steel Company went bankrupt, leaving the Labuco mines to be closed and abandoned until acquired by the Walker Coal Company in 1911. There were several drift mines at Labuco operating on the Mary Lee coal seam that averaged 4 to 6 feet in thickness. The Labuco mine stayed in operation until 1915 when they were closed down. In 1917, the newly organized Birmingham Trussville Iron Company purchased the Labuco mines and property to increase coal production following the United States entry into World War I. The Birmingham Trussville Iron Company eventually would develop one of the 3 drift mines into a slope mine to operate on the Mary Lee coal seam. In 1934, Birmingham-based Hammond Iron Company would acquire the Labuco mine and property, which they kept in operation until closing the mine down in 1938. In 1939, the Alabama Byproducts Corporation, which had been eyeing the Labuco property that lay parallel to its Praco mines, purchased it for future development. The Labuco mine would later be assigned to the company's Flat Creek Coal Mines division, which included the Colta and Praco mines. In late 1941, plans were made to reopen and modernize the Labuco mine, along with building new surface facilities, including a medical office and new commissary. With the United States entry into World War II, the Labuco mines reopened in the spring of 1942, employing 200 miners and producing some 1,000 tons of coal daily. Extracted coal from Labuco was loaded at the tipple into rail cars and transported by the Louisville and Nashville Railroad via the Cain Creek branch line to the Praco coal washing plant. The Labuco coal mine would stay in operation by the Alabama Byproducts Corporation until its permanent closing in 1963. In the early morning hours of May 11, 1943, a late night or owl shift mine crew of 24 men were working adjacent to the main slope of the Praco number 10 mine on work heading 22 North. The underground haulageway distance from the number 10 mine portal entrance at a 4% downgrade to the 22 North heading is over 8,000 feet in distance. The thickness of the Mary Lee coal seam in this area averaged 84 inches. The room and pillar method of mining was performed in this section of the number 10 mine, with work headings being extended out to the north of the number 10 slope haulageway, some 1,500 feet to the north and northwest heading. Electric short wall coal cutting machines were in use, as well as electric chain coal conveyors. Over the previous 3 days, the mine foreman and fire boss on each shift had taken special notice of recording methane and coal dust levels in and around the 22 North entry. The portable methane gas detectors had indicated negligible traces in different sections, but determined that they were below danger levels. Long before portable handheld methane gas detectors, canaries in cages were taken down into the coal mines to serve as a warning of methane gas in or coal dust and black damp. If the canary quit chirping and hopping around in the cage and its normal activity wavered, then it indicated to the coal miners and rescue teams that there was a buildup of deadly gases and to exit the area or don oxygen mask immediately. The little bird was highly prized by coal miners and taken well care of. Canaries contributed in saving hundreds of coal miners' lives every year, hence the phrase canary in a coal mine. Underground safety and ventilation inspectors had also gone through this area of 22 North, examining proper air course ventilation being maintained, and had taken further methane gas readings. The last methane test performed by the section crew mine foreman was at 3 a.m., noting that it was all clear in the work area of methane and coal dust buildup, but failed to check the area of the coal face where the cutting was being done. To prevent coal dust buildup, lime dust is used to spread along the walls and the floor and the ceiling of the mine in all areas not being mined or have already been mined. This method is called rock dusting. With the Praco coal mines being fully electric for underground mining, heavily armored electrical lines coming from the surface down through drill boreholes from surface substations situated at different locations. From there, the lines go to heavily protected underground substations, whereby different electrical lines branch off into the mine that have outlets for mining equipment. The Alabama Power Company supplied all electricity to the Praco mines from their Gorgas steam plant, located 6 miles to the west on the west bank of the Mulberry Fork of the Warrior River. 2,200 volts of alternating current was transmitted across the river over heavy electrical lines to the Praco mines, whereby through a central substation was converted to 220 volts direct current for use underground and surface facilities such as the coal washing plant and cable hoist houses. As the 24-man crew went about their usual duties preparing to load coal from a section of the coal face on 22 North, one of the two conveyor operators turned the switch on to begin the automated car hoist when an electrical arc was created, making contact with an unknown methane gas buildup at the coal face. The explosion occurred around 4:10 a.m. in the morning. The force and intensity of the explosion that shot out in waves, also igniting coal dust up the 22 North heading and out onto the main slope haulage way, sending flames and repetitive blast concussions felt thousands of feet up the slope. Of the 24-man crew, 10 were killed instantly as their bodies were torn apart and burned. Others were flung 50 feet back into the walls with their insides crushed. Mining equipment was torn apart and became projectiles, killing any miner in the area. 9 other miners of the crew had been fortunate to not have been in the area of 22 North and escaped unharmed. 5 miners near the main haulage way of 22 North managed to escape after being horribly burned. One of the escaped miners would die 24 hours later from injuries and burns, while another, transported to a Birmingham hospital, would succumb to his wounds and die 8 days later. The other 3 miners would eventually recover from their wounds and burns after many months. After word was received on the surface of the explosion, company officials activated their mine rescue crew at Praco to immediately make preparations to descend down into the number 10 mine. All electricity was shut down as a precaution to the number 10 mine to prevent any further explosions. The United States Bureau of Mines office in Birmingham was notified immediately during this time period. The Alabama Division of Mine Safety and Inspection office in Birmingham was also notified during this time. The Bureau of Mines office dispatched a mine rescue van and personnel to Praco, which arrived by 7 a.m. The Tennessee Coal, Iron, and Railroad Company was also notified and dispatched mine rescue crews from their Edgewater and Docena coal mines, which arrived later in the morning by their company's own rescue vehicles. Electricians and engineers who descended with the rescue teams under oxygen mask had to urgently repair and assess the air ventilation system to prevent further methane gas and coal dust buildup. Once completed and rechecking all electrical lines, was power restored to the mine to facilitate rescue and recovery efforts. News of the explosion soon reached every area of the Praco mining camp and beyond, as relatives and loved ones rushed to the number 10 mine portal entrance and anxiously awaited for news. Newspaper reporters from Birmingham drove out to report and document the explosion and mine rescue and recovery efforts. The first bodies of the dead miners were located and recovered and later brought to the surface before noon. Post-accident investigations would later reveal that much of the mining equipment used in the number 10 mine was not permissible. First aid stations containing medical supplies and equipment throughout the mine were almost non-existent, along with all miners being properly and thoroughly trained in first aid. Investigations would also reveal that the company did not maintain any underground mine rescue station that would also contain self-rescuers and or emergency oxygen. Up until this explosion, no miners at Praco were issued their own self-rescuers to be maintained on their persons at all times. Testing for methane and coal dust underground had been sporadic with poor communications of the conditions. Many areas of the mine contain pockets of what is referred to as black damp, which is caused by the mixture of unbreathable gases, mainly nitrogen and carbon dioxide. As a result of this accident, strict enforcement of safety guidelines and standards were implemented, along with the issuing of new safety equipment for all miners at the Praco coal mines. Equipment deemed as unsafe or not permissible was taken out of the mines and eventually replaced with modern approved mining machines. Not more than 2.5 months after the fatal underground explosion at the number 10 slope mine, did the Praco community and the Alabama Byproducts Corporation have to deal with yet another serious event. On the evening of July 28, 1943, with the mines and coal washing plant working round the clock shifts just to keep up with the demand for coal production during the war years, a fire of unknown origin broke out in the coal washing plant and quickly enveloped the entire wooden structure, along with adjacent buildings. Firefighting equipment the employees had could not contain the raging inferno. The fire soon spread to the extended wooden tipples of the number 7 and number 10 mines. By the following morning, almost the entire coal washing plant, most of the tipples, and other structures had been destroyed by the fire. All the equipment and machinery in these facilities were lost to the fire. As a result, the mines had to be shut down for several weeks until temporary facilities and tipples could be built. During this period, some 1,000 miners were employed at Praco, with the mines producing on average some 3,000 tons of wash coal daily. By the middle of August, enough repairs had been temporarily made so that underground mining operations could resume. With the coal washing plant destroyed, all extracted coal would be sent as is via the L&N Railroad to the company's coke plant located at Tarrant for an unknown period of time until a new plant could be built at Praco. Soon after mining operations resumed at Praco, company officials and engineers decided to enact a huge rebuilding project to erect a new modern coal washing plant and modify existing facilities. Instead of constructing a new coal washing plant with treated lumber, the new Praco coal preparation plant facilities would be primarily built using concrete, rebar, and steel. The Alabama Byproducts Corporation partnered with the Link-Belt Company in design and construction of the new plant. The Link-Belt Company would provide conveyors, including the minecart rotary tipple and essential coal washing equipment that would be utilized in transferring, screening, and washing the coal through the new plant facilities as it went through the process. Initial design and construction of the new coal washing plant and additional upgrades began in late September of 1943 and was completed by early June 1944. The new plant officially began operations on June 6, 1944. The same day the Allied invasion of Europe had begun, with landings taking place on the coast of Normandy in France. The enormous project was completed in just 10 months, involving hundreds of workers being employed. So many of the workers came from Birmingham that special scheduled buses operated round trip from Birmingham to Praco. The total price of construction and equipment spent by the Alabama Byproducts Corporation would top over $1 million. Some 5,500 cubic yards of concrete was poured for the erection of the new buildings, along with 1 million board feet of treated lumber that was also used in the construction. The number 7 mine tipple and minecart rail system leading from the portal to the new rotary dump tipple was completely overhauled with new features, along with the new hoist house with twin Hardy Tines electric cable hoist. The number 7 mine portal itself was concrete lined, as well as the number 6 drift mine portal that was revamped with a new concrete lined portal. At the end of the plant, a new concrete coal tipple was erected over a rail siding for the Louisville and Nashville railroads large gondola cars to receive coal overhead from twin chutes of a large coal bin. The new plant would have a capacity to produce some 6,000 tons of washed coal per day, compared to the previous plant being only able to handle 3,000 tons daily. With the increased size of the new plant, Alabama Power Company had to erect a new electrical transmission line and build a larger substation to accommodate the increased electric loads. 3 new kVA transformers were installed to accommodate incoming 2,300 volts and convert to 440 volts direct current for the plant. The Link Belt Company of Indianapolis, Indiana was contracted to install a series of long conveyor belts enclosed in their own housing, connecting all of the buildings involved in the coal washing process. A new automated 2 minecart rotary dump was also installed by the Link Belt Company. The most unique structure of all the new multi-level concrete buildings was the 4 joined coal silos that stood almost 50 feet high. After the coal was deposited through the rotary dump at the tipple, it was sent by a link belt conveyor to the top of the silo, whereby an automated chute system on rollers deposited coal according to the type and purpose in 4 circular silos joined together. At the bottom of the silo, another enclosed link belt conveyor system sent the coal up to the top of the screening house. During the screening process, any rocks or other items than coal was further separated that the rotary tipple screening did not catch and sent by the conveyor to the rock bin house. All rock waste is then sent by a series of long conveyor belts exiting the plant all the way up to the top of the ridge line on the south side of the plant and deposited. After screening, the coal was then conveyed to the washing, rescreening, and table houses, then to the large concrete coal bins situated above the rail loading chute. Coal washing plants use an enormous amount of water for the cleaning process. The new Praco plant would utilize water being constantly pumped out of the mines to a central surface reservoir, where it was sent via pipelines to a large pump house where it was filtered for use. Another water filtration system was installed to recycle the water in the plant of impurities, having it undergo another filtration process before being used again during the coal washing process. This is also known as refuse sluicing. Between 5,000 to 6,000 gallons of water per minute was used during the entire automated cleaning process. The primary export of the Praco coal washing plant would be to provide metallurgical coal for the company's byproduct coke plant located at Tarrant. This type of coal, after undergoing an extensive coking process, was used in the production of high-quality steel, which the Birmingham Industrial District was well known for. To add to the daily coal washing production and output, the nearby Flat Creek Division coal mines of Colta and Labuco would have their coal shipped by rail via the Louisville and Nashville Railroad's Cain Creek branch line to the Praco plant for processing. By 1946, extracted coal coming from the company's Littleton strip pits, located 2 miles southwest of Sayre, would also be shipped by L&N on the Cain Creek branch line to the Praco plant for processing. The Littleton strip pit operations were contracted out to the Lewis Chambers Construction Company of New Orleans, Louisiana. The other coal strip pit operation was taking place at Maxine, located almost 3 miles southwest of Praco, near present-day Alliance Road. Coal from the Maxine strip pit would be hauled by trucks up the road to the Praco plant for processing. The Maxine coal strip pit operations were contracted out to the Southern Minerals Company of Birmingham. Other new additions built at the Praco mines included a new modern bathhouse that was built for the miners and surface plant employees that could accommodate the increase in personnel. The new Praco coal washing plant became the most modern and one of the largest of its kind in the southeastern United States. Following the end of World War II in September of 1945, coal production in the Birmingham district would continue to stay at high levels. Such was the case with the Alabama Byproducts Corporation's Flat Creek Coal Mines Division. The Louisville and Nashville Railroad's Cain Creek branch line locomotives and crews were transporting some 2,800 tons of coal from the Praco preparation plant every day except Sundays to Alabama Byproducts Corporation's coke plant at Tarrant. Add to which L&N was transferring carloads of coal from the mines at Labuco, Colta, and the strip pits near Littleton to the Praco plant for processing. L&N maintained a small rail yard at Gamma for the placement of empty and full cars along the sidings. Also at Gamma were coal bins and a water tower for the servicing of L&N's locomotives. The main workhorse locomotive that L&N used on the Cain Creek branch line was the Mikado Class J3, which could handle heavy freight loads such as long trips of loaded coal cars. The Gamma rail yard was centrally located to accommodate end-stage rail cars from Colta, Littleton, and Labuco. The Praco plant had several sidings that could also accommodate additional coal cars for staging. With the Louisville and Nashville Railroad maintaining scheduled freight trains operating on the Cain Creek branch line, it may be assumed that the movement of coal to the Praco preparation plant would coincide with the freight schedule. Whether or not the Louisville and Nashville Railroad maintained a separate switch engine and crew stationed at Gamma to handle this coal traffic is unknown. It would seem logical, though, if this was so. With so much traffic on the line, all train movements had to be carefully choreographed. However, the daily rail operations servicing the Flat Creek Division's coal mines along this area of the Cain Creek branch line were handled. It was a remarkable logistical feat involving the movement of so much traffic. Between 1947 to 1951, the Praco mines were producing, on average, 725,000 tons of coal annually that went through the preparation plant and shipped by rail to the company's byproduct coke plant located just northeast of Birmingham at Tarrant. This did not include combined coal coming from the Labuco, Colta, Littleton, and Maxine mines that totaled over 300,000 tons annually. In 1949, there were 600 coal miners employed working at the Praco mines, with the majority being assigned to the number 7 mine. By 1951, both the number 7.5 and the number 10 mines' underground workings had reached the extent of their mining operations. Engineers and miners had by this time connected all 3 of the mines by way of long haulage ways serviced by electric locomotives that would transport trips of loaded mine carts to the number 7 mine main slope to be hoisted back up to the surface. Eventually, both of these mines would be played out and abandoned. Many sections afterwards would be sealed off for safety with regards to controlling methane gas, black damp, and for redirecting air course ventilation. Thereafter, all underground mining was concentrated on the number 7 mine. The main haulage way slope, including additional parallel slopes of the number 7 mine, would reach some 9,000 feet in distance with a surface depth of 650 feet. By 1958, the number 7 main slope haulage ways would total out at 12,500 feet in distance, or nearly 2.5 miles underground, at a surface depth of over 800 feet. As the underground mining expanded, engineers sunk several new deep shafts ranging from 450 to 650 feet in depth for the placement of new electrically powered intake and exhaust Joy Manufacturing Company ventilation fans. Older air ventilation units were replaced, such as the ones situated 6,000 feet in distance west-southwest from the number 7 portal entrance located between the 3 north and 5 north headers. The work entries, haulage ways, and additional slopes from 8 right to 19 right from the main slope would stretch north, covering an additional 9,000 feet in distance. Work entries 4 south to 14 south from the main slope would stretch south over 7,200 feet in distance, just 600 feet north from the bottom of the Locust Fork riverbed. The 2 west section that branched off of the 14th South header actually went up under the old Ensley Southern Railroad's Maxine Tunnel. Eventually, the number designation that had always existed in publicly identifying the coal mines at Praco was retired and were now listed as the Praco mine. Internally, all mines at Praco were still identified by their given number. By 1958, the Praco mines had covered some 14 square miles of underground workings. In 1952, the Alabama Byproducts Corporation began development of opening a new coal mine 3 miles to the southwest of Praco on land that had been acquired by the company when it had purchased the Pratt Consolidated Coal Company in 1924. The new mine, to be named Maxine in recognition of the original Maxine coal mines and community, would be a fully mechanized coal mine with the latest equipment being utilized. The new Maxine mine would be developed to operate on the America coal seam that averaged 60 inches in thickness, with 2 slopes operating. In later years, sections of the Pratt seam would also be worked as well. One slope contained a continuous belt-operated conveyor system that would carry the coal from deep inside the mine to the surface and onto the coal washer. A second slope was laid with a rail system to operate as a man and materials way to transport miners and equipment. Initial construction began in August of 1952 with the two slopes being developed, along with the construction of surface facilities. The new Maxine mine would have the latest automated coal washing plant installed near the mine entrance. The Louisville and Nashville Railroad would construct a new 3.22-mile spur line, which originated at the Praco Y, heading in a south-southwesterly direction, paralleling most of present-day Alliance Road to reach the Maxine coal mine. L&N began building the new spur line in 1953 and was completed and officially opened for freight traffic in March of 1954. 220 miners were initially employed at the Maxine mine when it opened, with that number eventually rising to 450 over the following years. The Louisville and Nashville Railroad began hauling between 50 to 55 loaded coal cars on average per day from the Maxine mine. The new coal mine would average 550,000 tons of coal output annually, with that number rising to 1 million tons in later years. The Alabama Byproducts Corporation would also take a page from history in replicating what the Pratt Consolidated Coal Company had done decades before in building a coal barge loading wharf on the Locust Fork River. A 2,500-foot-long elevated belt conveyor system was built from the coal mine down to the new coal wharf. Most of the Maxine mines extracted and washed coal would be used for electric utility steam power plants operated by the recently formed Southern Company in the state. Coal shipped by barges down the river to Mobile would be destined for the Berry steam plant. By 1956, the Praco mine employed some 354 men, of which 275 worked underground, involving 2 producing shifts and 1 maintenance shift 4 days a week. Each producing shift averaged a total of 2,800 tons of mine material, of which some 1,400 tons of coal from the Mary Lee seam was separated, washed, and shipped by the surface plant. With the exception of certain areas that had operated longwall mining, the room and pillar method of mining was employed throughout the Praco mine. Entries were spaced 250 to 300 feet apart. Rooms were driven 30 to 35 feet wide, with 15 to 20 foot support pillars left in place. Crosscuts were spaced 50 to 70 feet apart, allowing for proper air intake and return airflows. Worked out areas were stoped with concrete blocks or rocks and refuse that allowed for intake and return airflow to remain separated and push fresh oxygen deeper into the mine. On the morning of May 31st, 1956, the morning shift consisting of 131 men descended on man trips down into the number 7 mine to begin work at 7 a.m. Once below, the men were assigned to their respective areas of the mine to begin work. The Old Works fire boss and a Bradis man had to check on the furthest abandoned workings located on the 19 right header off of the number 7 main slope that was some 7,900 feet in distance, or roughly 1.5 miles. One of the assigned duties was to check on the water pump system in that section of the mine that prevents flooding. After securing an electric locomotive to make the trip instead of walking, the 2 men traveled down 19 right to the abandoned work section. Shortly after they passed the number 2 East Main haulage way into the abandoned works, the fire boss stopped the trolley locomotive and set the brake. At that instant, an electric arc was caused between the main electric line and the trolley locomotive guide wire, igniting an unknown pocket of methane gas in the area, causing an explosion. The initial explosion occurred at roughly 8 a.m., followed in quick succession by several more, sending concussive shock waves back down the 19 right header and up the number 2 East Haulage Way. A mine foreman working with his crew further up on the number 2 East Haulage Way immediately notified the underground mine supervisor's office by telephone that a massive explosion had taken place on 19 right and did not know the extent of casualties and or damage. After checking on the ventilation unit nearby, he redirected the airflow and instructed the 56 miners on his crew to evacuate immediately. The underground mine supervisor notified the surface supervisor by telephone of the explosion, who in turn telephoned all underground areas of the mine being worked, instructing the foreman to evacuate their crews immediately and ensure a proper head count as they made their way to the surface. Underground electrical power was soon shut down to prevent any further explosions until the situation could be assessed. At the same time, the emergency mine rescue teams were activated at Praco, along with Maxine and Labuco mines, which responded immediately to the number 7 mine. State and federal mine safety offices in Birmingham were immediately notified, as well as the United Mine Workers District 20 office, also located in Birmingham. A mine rescue van and personnel were dispatched to Praco within 2 hours. After all personnel had been accounted for using the miners' check tag board system, it was determined that 2 miners were missing and their last seen location was near or at the initial origin of the explosion. This location was over 3 miles in distance underground from the number 7 mine surface portal entrance. The first rescue teams under oxygen had to walk in, proceeding down the main haulage way slope through different levels, roughly 9,000 feet in distance, to the main 19 right header before proceeding north another 7,900 feet, all the while carrying or pushing equipment in mine carts. After checking methane and oxygen levels, it was determined to restore limited power to the slope in checked areas of the mine. Air ventilation was soon restored into the mine after maintenance crews examined the units closest to the area of the explosion to certify that they had not been damaged and that there were no exposed electrical wiring. When the first teams entered the area after walking 3 miles underground down the 19 right header, they found large bodies of water rising from the pumping system being blown out. Vast amounts of standing water 2 to 3 feet deep would have to be pumped out in order to proceed further down the 19 right header. Multiple timber brattice supports were blown out and burned down, along with numerous concrete block stopings being blown out. Vast areas of the walls that had been lime dusted were wiped clean by the extreme force of the explosion. More rescue teams and repair parties had descended down to relieve the first teams and bring more equipment and repair affected areas. After more than 12 hours underground, the first teams managed to reach the explosion site where they could finally survey the damage. The 5-ton electric locomotive was shredded from the explosion, along with everything in the area. By this time, electricity had been restored to the number 7 slope, allowing for quicker movement of additional men and material down into the mine. The bodies of the two miners were eventually located, recovered, and brought back to the surface in the early morning hours of June 1st, 1956. Later that morning, all rescue teams had completed their work and ascended back to the surface, exiting the mine. Investigations of the explosion, which began immediately after the recovery of the miners, would conclude that an electrical arc from the trolley locomotive set off an unknown methane gas pocket, causing the explosion and fire. It would be later recommended that electricity should not be running in any abandoned section of the mines. Investigators would also determine that the two factors that kept the explosion from not rolling and expanding further in the mine was the factor of the rock lime dust covering the walls and ceilings, along with a large body of standing water covering some 250 feet in length, which caused the ensuing fire to be halted. It would be later recommended that stronger additional stopings also be built for the areas of the mine that had been worked and abandoned. As with most work-related accidents, it takes serious injuries or deaths to bring forth changes to ensure better safety standards. This explosion and the one occurring in 1943, along with the roof collapse in 1938, received much news coverage. However, many singular deaths and injuries would take place in the Praco mines that would barely receive a mention in the news, but would be felt in the mining community. Over the 50 years the Praco mines have been in operation, many coal miners would lose their lives underground in a variety of gruesome deaths. Many, if not most, safety standards adhered to in underground mining operations today are derived from the lessons and practices learned from the tragic deaths of those early miners. By 1958, officials with the Alabama Byproducts Corporation had been evaluating the increased cost of maintaining underground coal mining operations at Praco. The coal mines there had been operating for over 50 years and were the oldest the company still maintained. The cost of modernizing underground mining equipment, including replacing the aging rail system, was just too high. The company's Maxine mine, operating 3.5 miles to the south, had been increasing its annual coal output to north of 1.5 million tons annually. Many coal miners that worked at Maxine had already transferred while still residing with their families at Praco. With the company's Colta mine having been closed down since 1955, coal was still being shipped by rail from its nearby Labuco mine to the Praco preparation plant, where it underwent a cleaning and washing process as metallurgical coal before being shipped to the byproduct coke plant located at Tarrant. In early September, company officials announced the permanent closing of the Praco coal mine. The last full day of operations would be September 26, 1958. The coal preparation surface plant would remain operating to process coal from the Labuco mine nearby. Working with the United Mine Workers District 20 and Local 5829 at Praco, many of the remaining coal miners were able to transfer to the nearby Maxine and Labuco mines. Other employees that worked at various surface positions and shops pertaining to underground mining operations were also offered transfers. A number of miners and surface personnel would remain for several months after the closing to remove equipment from underground and surface buildings that would be scrapped or sold off. Many parts of the mine would have to be sealed off for safety measures regarding methane gas. The air ventilation units would also later be shut down, dismantled, and sealed off. After several of the closing down procedures were finally completed, the mine portals were filled in with dirt and covered over. The company would keep the commissary and medical office open for the foreseeable future, along with maintaining employee housing. While the company maintained the commissary open at Praco, it would eventually shut down its medical office. The United States Post Office, located at Praco, that had been formally established in 1931, would also remain open. The United Mine Workers Praco Local 5829 was formerly closed, with the former Praco coal miners now working at Maxine having joined Local 9984. Many changes had already been taking place over the years in the area with regards to coal mining and the towns built up around them. The Franklin Mining Company, which had operated the Powhatan mine, located some 2 miles south of Praco, had sold the property to the newly formed Powhatan Coal Company in 1948. Some months after taking over, the new company was not able to turn a profit and permanently ceased underground mining operations at Powhatan, leaving many coal miners out of work to support their families. In later years, the Louisville and Nashville Railroad would abandon its Powhatan spur line and remove all the rails. In May of 1958, the newly formed Southern Electric Generating Company announced plans to open a large modern underground coal mine to be located in neighboring Walker County, just south of Parrish, near the community of Williamstown. In the fall of 1958, the Alabama Byproducts Corporation was able to secure a long term contract with the Southern Electric Generating Company, which was jointly owned by the Alabama Power and Georgia Power companies, to operate and maintain its new underground coal mine designated SEGCO number 1. Coal from this mine would be used at the new steam generating power plant being built 65 miles to the south at Wilsonville, located in Shelby County. The new mine, which opened by June of 1960, would employ some 400 coal miners operating on the Mary Lee coal seam. It may be assumed that some miners and their families relocated from Praco to the Parrish area for employment at the SEGCO number 1 mine, or commuted the 15 miles by car to work their shifts. In August of 1963, company officials announced the permanent closing of the Labuco coal mine, which would take effect on August 31st, affecting the employment of 120 miners and surface personnel. With the Labuco mine closing, it was also announced that the coal preparation plant at Praco would shut down permanently as well. The remaining employees at Praco, as well as the Labuco mine, would later be offered positions at Maxine or the new SEGCO number 1 mine and facilities. In February of 1964, the Louisville and Nashville Railroad would apply to the Alabama Public Service Commission to close its agency freight office at Praco that coordinated the movement of freight trains and cars on its Cain Creek branch line from Chitopa to Maxine. The application was later approved to have all branch line traffic to be handled thereafter through its Birmingham office. From 1960 to 1970, the combined population of the Flat Creek and Praco area numbered around 1,100. By 1980, the population had dropped by half that number. Of the original 600 homes built and maintained by the company of Praco, about 200 had been abandoned and razed. The remaining homes were rented at low cost, which induced many to stay because of the affordable housing. During this period, the preparation plant and surface buildings were razed to their foundations after scavenging what equipment and materials could be salvaged for reuse or sold. With the exception of a few remaining wooden buildings, only the tall concrete silo remained intact. Over the years, the Alabama Byproducts Company would later lease many sections in and around Praco to coal companies for surface strip mining that also included the removing of large sections of the coal waste pile that had built up and over the ridgeline located to the south side of where the preparation plant had been located. In later years, several companies would lease property near the old preparation plant and have buildings constructed. The Alabama Byproducts Company would also end up storing mining and drilling equipment at the old bathhouse. In 1980, the old coal mining community of Praco still had residents residing in the company-owned houses being maintained by the Alabama Byproducts Corporation. Out of 600 plus company homes that once dotted the area around the old Praco coal mines, only 80 were left standing. Several of the houses were dilapidated and beyond repair. The remaining homes were being rented to residents at low cost, ranging from $40 to $90 a month, depending on the condition of the house. The filtration station that pumped water to the homes was also maintained by the company as well. In June of 1980, the Alabama Byproducts Corporation finally closed down the commissary at Praco, making it the last company-operated store in Alabama. After clearing all the store's inventory, the doors were padlocked and the building abandoned. The following year, in 1981, officials with the Alabama Byproducts Corporation began letting word out to the still remaining residents of Praco that the termination of leases and eviction notices would be forthcoming sometime later in the year. After being in the housing business for nearly 57 years relating to coal mining, the company was finally calling it quits. Some residents not wanting to wait began moving out, while others who had lived there for 30 years or even more stayed until the very end. In December of 1981, the dozen or more residents still at Praco received their eviction notices to vacate. Company officials assisted residents by finding affordable housing in different areas of Jefferson and Walker counties. By the summer of 1982, the last coal mining camp in Alabama was finally deserted. The remaining deserted homes at Praco were eventually demolished and cleared off. The water pumping station was also closed down and the building razed as well. The post office stayed in operation until 1986 when it too finally closed down. In 1985, the Drummond Company of Birmingham, which had started in Walker County shortly after World War II with several small coal mines, purchased the Alabama Byproducts Corporation along with their holdings, which included the Praco Mines property. Over the following years, the remaining small businesses pulled out that were located around the old coal silo. Soon after, the remaining buildings that included the old commissary, bathhouse, post office, and outlying structures were eventually torn down and the property cleared off. The property where the mining camp had once been located was later strip mined to an extent around sites of the early coal drift mines that once operated on the Mary Lee seam. Sometime later, after reclamation of the land had been completed, the Alawest Company of Northport, Alabama, purchased the surface rights to thousands of acres of land in and around Praco for the cultivating and harvesting of timber. Today, where the Praco preparation site once stood is now completely overgrown, with nature having reclaimed the area. Certain sections around Praco are leased to various hunting clubs that also help maintain a watchful eye on the property. In the winter months, driving down Flat Top Road, one can still catch a glimpse of the top of the old coal silo through the trees as the last lone sentinel of Praco. The following video was taken many years ago during a series of field trips to different sections of the Louisville and Nashville Railroad's Cain Creek branch line, mostly relating to coal mining sites. This section, known as the Praco Y, was taken along Skelton Creek that is parallel to Flat Top Road. The Y connected the spur lines to the Praco, Powhatan, and later Maxine coal mines. Two wooden trestles spanned Skelton Creek that averaged 235 feet in length and between 30 to 35 feet in height. A dam was built on Skelton Creek about 100 feet north of the Y to limit the flow of water downstream to protect the two wooden trestles. Each wooden trestle contained 3 support timber columns. The south Y trestle center support column is still standing. The other trestle timber supports were cut down, most likely sometime after the line had been abandoned, to prevent anyone from taking trucks or four-wheelers across them for fun. And I'm sure it was also done for insurance purposes too. The center column was most likely left standing in order not to block up the creek, as is one of the columns that was cut down is now laying almost halfway across the creek. As for the north side Y trestle, there is nothing left but cut down support column stumps. The following video and photos were taken many years ago during a field trip to the Praco coal mine site. The visit was in late winter after hunting season had ended. Of the remaining structures left at Praco, the coal silo is the most recognizable and visible. The new preparations plant was built after a massive fire took place in 1943 that burned down most of the mine tipples and coal washing plant that had been built of wood. In less than 1 year's time, the new plant was opened in June of 1944. And just an interesting side note, some 5,500 cubic yards of concrete was used during the construction of the new Praco preparation plant. The coal silo stands roughly 45 to 50 feet in height and contains 4 separate interior silos. They were officially named storage and blending bins, but everyone just called them the silos. Each silo measured 18 feet in diameter and could hold roughly 1,000 tons of mine run coal. Dumped coal was then sent by the conveyor belt from the bottom of the minecart tipple rotary dump to the top of the silo, where an automated swivel chute on a circular track would dispense coal into each of the four silos. Another automated belt conveyor located at ground level would send the coal up to the screening house to begin the separation and washing process. As you're making your way up towards the silo, you're on this access road that's maintained by, I think it's one or two hunting clubs that lease this particular area on both north and south sides of Flat Top Road. Even in the winter months, it would just be nearly impossible just to even get to the old mine site, like the silo, the coal silo tower. The overgrowth is just incredible, but it's pretty impressive when you're standing at the bottom. It looks a lot taller than 45 to 50 feet, but there's a little access hole that you can work your way around to the other side of the tower and go through this access hole into the base of the tower inside. And, you can take a look around, and there's a lot of coal waste piles, and somebody had put a ladder to where you can climb up into the next level and you can take a look all the way up one of the silos to the top. And way up top is where that swivel chute is located. And that's where the top conveyor system came up above where that hole is, or crack in the concrete. But that's another access point in the ceiling where the coal came down from the top. Not much to see inside, but it is interesting, and it is very well constructed. As stated earlier, the property, when visited many, many years ago, was leased to hunting clubs, and I imagine that presently would still be the case. However, there might be restricted or no access with locked gates, remote cameras, and no trespassing signs posted. The Praco number 6 mine portal is situated about 400 feet southwest of the coal silo, located in between the silo and the number 6 mine portal was the number 7 slope mine cable hoist house and minecart tipple and rotary car dump. Back then, when I visited the site many years ago, a local hunting club that had leased the area back then, of course, they had done a wonderful job of keeping much of the area cleared and seeded for deer and wild turkey, along with maintaining a dirt track trail along the base of the ridge line, paralleling the old preparation plant site and the number 6 and number 7 mine locations. So, as stated earlier, I'm assuming that the property is still leased by one or two or maybe even more hunting clubs on the north and south sides of Flat Top Road. The Praco number 6 mine was first opened by the Pratt Consolidated Coal Company between 1912 to 1915 as a drift mine, operating on the top portion of the Mary Lee coal seam. Ventilation was provided by a parallel air furnace shaft. In later years, the number 6 mine was utilized as a man and materials way. When the Alabama Byproducts Corporation bought out the Pratt Consolidated Coal Company, which included the Praco mines in late 1924, they gradually began upgrading and building new facilities. The Praco number 6 mine portal was later modified with a concrete facing with left-right entries and partially concrete lined interior haulageways in 1929. Uh, there is scant operational information on the number 6 mine really after 1929. The number 7 and number 10 slope mines would later be modified with new concrete portal entries, which their designs were completely generic and bland compared to the number 6. The number 6 portal seemed to be a showcase mine portal with the company and the name of the mine etched into the portal facing. 1929, as engraved on the concrete facing, indicates when the new portal was built. Almost anyone visiting the present day site remains would naturally assume that this was the main Praco coal mine portal, when in fact it was the number 7 and number 10 slope mines located further down before 1944-45. And after 1950, it became the number 7 slope mine, which was the most active coal mine at Praco. There is or was a small access hole on the left portal side at ground level where you could actually lay down and peer through this little hole big enough to get a camera and a flashlight through to see the interior of the number 6 mine portal, the left side. The interior is concrete lined, and at the time it had about 3 to 4 feet of standing water. After underground mining operations were halted in 1958, all of the mine portals and air shafts were later sealed off with dirt and covered over. The interior haulageway of the number 6 mine, of course, has been filled in with dirt and sealed. The right side portal entrance is still completely sealed over, and I'm sure it would probably look the same. Just a side note, it would be really nice if all the dirt and topsoil could be removed from the mine portal to fully see what it looked like intact. And if need be, put some iron gates up there, to seal off the entrances. But it would be nice because there are very few intact concrete mine portals, especially for coal mines, even left in the Birmingham district. A lot of research went into trying to find a period era photo of that particular mine portal entrance, and unfortunately, none could be found. The rock bin house concrete and basement type foundation is located roughly 200 feet north of the Praco number 6 mine portal, going up a gentle rise. This was built during the construction of the new coal preparation plant between 1943 and 1944. The rock bin house was connected by 3 separate belt conveyors originating from the minecart rotary dump, picking table, and jig and table plants. All 3 conveyors would send waste rock and refuse that would be separated from the coal during the screening and washing process. Waste rock and refuse being collected via the belt conveyor would be transferred to the refuse belt conveyor, where it would exit the rock bin house and be sent up the north side of the ridge line on another series of elevated belt conveyors where it was deposited. There's not much to see with regards to the foundation remains. When the coal preparation plant at Praco was dismantled and the majority of it razed, in addition to the bulldozers covering up the mine portals, the ground level section of the concrete foundation of the rock bin house, the openings at ground level were cinder blocked up with steel rebar placed over it so that bulldozers pushed dirt up on all sides, covering the lower level. To the unassuming eye, it would appear to be a basement. So that's why the ground, when you going up to the foundation, it rises up. And that was put there after the plant was closed down and everything was raised. Located some 230 feet northwest of the Rock Bin House Foundation through some serious underbrush is the concrete rail car coal loading bin structure remains. The rail car loading bin platform stands roughly 35 feet in height and was designed to load standard gondola rail cars that the Louisville and Nashville Railroad operated at Praco. The raised railcar loading bin was built between 1943 to 1944 as part of the new Praco coal preparation plant. The elevated coal bin was situated atop a single rail line and could accommodate loading one open gondola car at a time. Two separate coal bins would deposit stored coal down through two separate chutes at the bottom and have a single rail car loaded in minutes. Coal that was shipped by the L&N from the Labuco and Colta mines, as well as the Littleton and Maxine coal strip pits, were processed at the preparation plant along with coal coming from the Praco mines. Most likely, a yard locomotive was used to shuttle empty and loaded rail cars to sidings where they would be formed up for transport by an L&N locomotive. Between 1944 to 1955, the Louisville and Nashville Railroad was transporting on average some 2,800 tons of processed metallurgical coal from the Praco plant to Alabama Byproduct Corporation's coke plant in Tarrant, located some 34 miles away. The video was taken some years back during a field trip out to areas of Southern Walker and West Jefferson counties, exploring sections of the Cain Creek branch line. And this was one of the itineraries to see if we could locate the actual remains of the rail car loading bin chute at the Praco preparation plant site. So after going through a lot of underbrush, we were able to get to it, and it was kind of worth the effort. It's an impressive structural remains of the platform, and one of the only few structures that remained of Praco that's still left standing deep out in the woods. Located in a section of woods just off of present day Alliance Road, a little over 1 mile southwest from the site of the Praco number 7 slope mine entrance, are the concrete foundation and building remains to the number 1 air shaft. Between 1948 to 1949, engineers began installing additional larger air exhaust and intake ventilation units positioned at key sites over the ever expanding underground workings of the Praco number 7 slope mine. The Alabama Byproducts Corporation contracted with the Joy Manufacturing Company to supply larger surface and underground air intake and exhaust ventilation units that would cover the entire active and projected workings of the Praco number 7 mine. The first unit to be installed was the number 1 air exhaust shaft that would be situated above the right side of the Praco number 7 slope mine main haulage way, located some 5,700 feet from the surface portal entrance to the northeast. Birmingham based Cowan Equipment Company, who were experts in constructing mine shafts, was contracted to sink a 642-foot deep circular concrete lined shaft down to the underground workings. Once completed, new electrical lines were erected from Praco by the Alabama Power Company to the number 1 air exhaust ventilation unit site. A small substation was built adjacent to the number 1 air shaft to supply needed electrical power. New concrete foundations have been built to house the new unit, along with an enclosure for the large fan. When finished in early 1949, the new unit was able to pull already circulated air from the mine up the 642-foot deep shaft at a rate of 208,000 cubic feet per minute. When the Praco mines closed down in 1958, it was maintained for several months for work crews underground as they finished up removing equipment and sealing off sections of the mine. By 1960, the number one air exhaust ventilation unit and equipment was removed, along with the electrical lines and the air ventilation shafts sealed with reinforced concrete. Today, the concrete remains can be seen during the winter months through the trees when driving down Alliance Road. The following videos were taken some years ago during the winter months while on a field trip researching several historic coal mine sites located out in West Jefferson County. The Praco coal mines were part of the itinerary that morning. One of the sites to locate was the number one air shaft and fan house remains related to the Praco number 7 coal mine. The remains of the number one air shaft and fan house were located in a section of woods just off of Alliance Road. The site remains are situated in between the road and Coal Creek up on a small rise. The only remaining evidence is the large concrete foundation and the housing that is positioned directly over and adjacent to the air shaft. Even though it is just basically a concrete shell out in the woods, the remains and the site are interesting to see. The structure is much larger than anticipated when you first see it. The total cost of the equipment and construction of the facility is not known, but it must have been expensive. The cost of sinking the 642-foot deep air shaft was around $200,000 back in 1948. The circular opening here on the backside is where the air exhaust covering was matted up against the concrete foundation and had sealant all the way around it. Just inside the opening here to the left is a wire mesh gate that was installed back in 1948 or 1949 for safety reasons to prevent any large objects or persons from being sucked into the exhaust fan unit when it was operating. The actual air shaft itself would be located further back and angling off to the right behind the wall. It is just no telling how much reinforced concrete mixed with steel rebar was actually used in building this housing for the exhaust ventilation unit, and that 642 feet below would have been the main slope haulage way for the Praco number 7 coal mine. Visiting many of these coal mine sites in the winter months is always much more favorable than attempting during the summer months. Uh, Kind of self explanatory due to the heat and the intense overgrowth. Some of the video may be a little hazy due to the fact it was very early in the morning with the sun coming up just over the ridge line in the distance. There is an opening here that is covered by a double chain link fence. I'm sure this was installed after the air shaft had been closed down and dismantled to prevent anyone from entering, especially if the shaft itself had not been sealed yet. Just up ahead here is the door access leading to the inside of the ventilation housing unit. Just a side note here, whenever visiting sites like this, it's always good to be wearing waterproof boots. And directly straight ahead behind that concrete wall would be the actual 642-foot deep circular air shaft. That wall was built to seal off access to the air shaft sometime after the Praco mines had closed. The concrete wall is most likely about 3 feet thick and interlaced with steel rebar. You can see how the walls are curved coming from the actual air shaft opening and leading up to the steel meshed safety gate. The curvature allowed the air being drawn up out of the mine below to have a free flow to the exhaust fan unit without any obstructions. Basically, a wind tunnel. If someone had the misfortune to be in here when the fan was running, pulling air from the mine below at 208,000 cubic feet per minute, they would be sucked into the steel mesh safety gate. Mine site construction back then was on a whole different level than it is today. Back then, they built structures to last. This here is just a small forgotten piece of history relating to the coal mining in the Birmingham district and that of the Praco mines as well. There are most likely several more air ventilation fan house remains relating to the Praco mines situated in different areas. I had originally planned to visit some of these sites years ago, but had to put them on hold due to time constraints and other projects being worked on. Just wanted to make a few closing comments here. It takes a lot of time and effort in researching these old mines, along with making field trips to the areas, which can add up in expenses such as gas and wear and tear on a vehicle. For the most part, it is enjoyable and can be relaxing, always getting out into the woods. But mostly it takes up quite a bit of free time that, in the end, all of us just do not have more of often than not. I hope everyone enjoyed this rather extended video on the history of the Praco coal mines. Thank you so much for watching.